Facebook parent company Meta just bought Manus AI, a company that started in China but moved to Singapore in June. Now, considering U.S. restrictions on both chip sales and investment to China, how can either Washington or Meta be sure that Manus no longer has ties to China?
Yeah, so it's always hard to tell for sure, especially with Chinese companies where there consistently can be links back to either the country or the state party apparatus. That said, I will say that Manus has substantially downsized their presence in China. They closed their offices in China. They were cooperating with Alibaba to make a new model, and then they ceased that cooperation. They moved their headquarters to Singapore. There's a variety of reasons for this. The fact that they raised a bunch of money from US investors did trigger concerns in Washington. And those investors probably would have had to divest from Manus had the company not kind of fundamentally changed its structure. On the other hand, there's risks here if those ties to the Chinese party remain and those companies are now being integrated into the US ecosystem.
As one of the architects of U.S. export controls in the Biden administration, do you worry that this kind of move of a Chinese AI company to a third country only to be bought by a U.S. firm sort of skirts the spirit of those controls?
I think it depends on the nature of the company. I mean, the fact is, this is allegedly no longer a Chinese company. And if that's the case, then I don't think it skirts the controls. If anything, I think it actually shows that the idea behind the controls are working. Not only are they restricting China's access to compute, but actually potentially they are causing some of China's leading AI firms to say we're going to defect. Essentially, we're going to leave China, because the only way that we can really contribute to the broader kind of AI goals that we have is to join the West. That is the goal, right? If that's actually what's happening here, and there's some indications it could be, that's phenomenal. That's a huge success of both the outbound investment restrictions and the export controls working together to pressure companies to pull them away from China and towards the West. That's a double win, right? It's both hurting the Chinese and it's helping the West.
If Manus has effectively defected to the U.S., obviously Beijing won't be very happy about that. Do you expect to see any kind of retaliation or regulation to stop this from happening again?
I think this will probably heighten regulatory scrutiny on these types of occurrences in Beijing. I think there's already been some head scratching about Manus and what happened. And I think if this starts to become a routine pattern, I would imagine that the Chinese government would make it much, much harder for even nascent and early stage firms to leave China. Keep in mind, this isn't easy for all of the employees, right? Like all of the engineers that were located in China, maybe some of them were able to go to Singapore, but some of them probably were not. So I think they did have to fire the majority of their staff. Not every company can do this. There could start to be costs imposed on the people or their families that engage in this. So I think if this becomes a repeated pattern, the Chinese government will look at it and crack down, but it will be hard, right? I mean, maybe it means that Chinese founders just start to found companies outside of China more.